Hi, I'm Lucas Mack, and I'm on a mission to see the hurting get healed and the healed go out and heal others, in order for all of us to experience the true love and light we desire. This podcast is me sharing my journey with you, so you don't feel alone in your journey. Welcome to the Golden Rule Revolution. Hello, brothers and sisters, and welcome back to another episode of the Golden Rule Revolution. I am Lucas Mack. Thank you for joining me on this journey. I hope you are all doing well. Recently released a podcast talking about all sorts of stuff. I so appreciate you all. We're doing the work. This is the work. Going through this dark time, this tunnel. I described it the other day as like we're all being squeezed through a toothpaste tube, and we're coming out in this like fine shape. But before the tube, we're just, rolling in formless matter. And we are being shaped into something so beautiful. We're becoming who we've always been. We are stepping into the fullness of our light and our love, truth, beauty, and goodness. And the process is not easy. It's not easy. And so, speaking of not easy, we are talking about getting rid of Mr. Nice Guy in this episode. I have my brother, Fabiano Mannino. This interview was amazing. And this is a follow-up because he interviewed me for this masculinity summit that he's about to launch. And whether you are a man or a woman out there, if you're a sister or a brother, I would really encourage signing up for his masculinity summit. It's all about getting rid of Mr. Nice Guy, as I say, the prolific people pleaser. And so this interview that Fabiano and I go through is amazing, and I know it's going to bless you. He shares his story very vulnerably, and it's incredibly relatable that we all have gone through something very similar. So I'm excited to bring my brother on this podcast, and make sure I'm going to put the link to the summit in the notes here. Make sure you sign up because this is a powerful one. Also, before I get in and introduce Fabiano, I have a men's retreat that I am leading May 25th through 29th in Dallas, Texas. So you fly into Dallas, Texas. It's $5,000. It is going to be a life-changing experience for you. You can go and look at the testimonials that I've had of other men that have gone through this retreat. This is something that you're going to come and change. You're going to become the man you've always wanted to be, thought you could be, but just don't know how. This is that experience. I have 7 slots left. So if you're interested or you know someone interested, reach out to my website, lucasmack.com. There's a page on there called retreats, and apply for it. This is the time, brothers. This is the time. Sisters, if you know a brother out there that is stuck looking to step into his power, this is the time. So I have my retreat coming up, the Masculinity Summit that Fabiano's launching. When men heal, the world heals, my dear brothers and sisters, because the masculine container is what allows the feminine energy to feel safe. And when that masculine container is simply holding space for us all, it's going to be incredible. The birth of new life that comes forth. So that's what I want to say. Sign up, go to our website, go to the links. I'll put them all in the show notes. And without further delay, here's my brother, Fabiano. Well, my brother, thank you so much for coming on. And like I said, we had a great time recording for your summit and what you're doing, bro. It's going to change lives. It's going to change lives. It's just we were talking to everyone before we started recording, just talking about the diverse set of men that are sharing their perspectives. And I didn't know all of them, and I just started following one of them that you shared, but I know the ones that I know have powerful perspectives, and we all like a good seasoning, bring the flavor in our own unique way. So Thanks for putting that on.
Absolutely. It's been fun, and it's been fun getting to connect with speakers like yourself and just like the wide range of experiences and viewpoints on masculinity, because so the topic that we're hitting on is, the nice guy syndrome and helping men lead a fearless life. or as you say, the prolific people pleaser,
That's right.
right?
That's
Like
right.
we're
Good.
hitting on this topic, but it also is just masculinity as a whole too. And really just, I mean, the common theme out of each of these speaker interviews, including yours, is brotherhood.
Mm.
And I just, my body just had the visceral response of like truth bumps. You know, I call them truth bumps instead of
Love it.
goosebumps.
I love
But
it.
these truth bumps are just this visceral feeling of why brotherhood is so important.
Mm.
And it was something like, people ask me like, why am I doing this? Why am I creating the summit? Like, who is this for?
Mm.
And I said, this is for the old version of me that didn't have this, where I felt alone, confused, depressed, isolated, suicidal.
Mm.
And I know there's men that are just a few steps behind who need this.
Yeah. Yeah. So beautiful. There's a verse in the Bible. It says, "Oh, how beautiful it is when brothers dwell together in unity."
Mm,
I love that. Oh, how beautiful it is when brothers dwell together in unity. And it is beautiful. It's a beautiful thing when men embrace as brothers as opposed as some false competition or some perceived threat. It's like, no, we're brothers. Get in here. Brothers don't shake hands.
yeah.
Brothers got a hug. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
We embrace each other.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So you shared a lot. The old you. Let's talk about the old you. Where'd you grow up, and what was life like for you that led you to doing this work today?
Yeah. Great question. I've talked about my story quite a bit, like yourself. And I was born in New Jersey, Trenton, New Jersey to be exact, the nice part of it.
Is
That's
that sarcastic? I don't know.
It
I
is.
don't know
It is
Jersey.
sarcastic. It is the
Okay.
ghetto. You can't get any
Okay.
more ghetto.
Okay.
Um,
That's awesome.
so, Trenton, New Jersey. Lived in Pennsylvania, Allentown, PA, for like 5 years.
Yeah.
Basically, like Trenton is where my mom was born, and she wanted us to be born in the same hospital she was. So
Cool.
she drove across the fucking bridge, had me, my brother, and my sister. And then we ended up leaving for when I was 5 years old. My father's mother passed away, and I learned this out after, but it was because I was wondering why we left, and as a kid you don't really understand, you just go.
Right.
And so I learned that it was because he couldn't deal with the death of his mother, and so he was just trying to get away.
Mm.
And there was also this sense of wanting to move and change and shift environment and whatnot. But I grew up most of my life here in Florida, so I'm in St. Pete, Florida.
Beautiful.
And I grew up in Tarpon Springs, Palm Harbor area, which is like 30-40 minutes north of here. I'm on one side of the water, this is on another side of the water.
Mm.
And so basically St. Pete is a peninsula on a peninsula, because Florida is a peninsula.
Right. Right.
And so I get the sunrise on one side and then the sunset on the other. So then they're 20 minutes apart in distance. So I get to see both in the same day. It's pretty magical.
Wow.
And but before I moved to St. Pete, after high school, I moved to Orlando for 7 years. And during those 7 years, I met my ex-wife.
Mm.
And through that relationship, it was a beautiful start, a beautiful beginning, and she was from Brazil.
Mm.
And I actually haven't talked about this publicly, in the sense of only with close friends and whatnot, but she was here on a visa, and a school visa, and we ended up starting to date January 2010 and ended up falling in love, right? This feeling. And once she graduated school, I didn't realize she would have to go back.
Mm.
And so, I proposed marriage.
Mm.
And because I had already loved her, and was this feeling of like, how can I, like, it's almost like it's not fair, this feeling of it's not fair.
Yeah.
And so I married her so she could stay and get her green card. And there was this deep love. There was still, there was this deep love in our relationship, but I started to notice things about myself. Like I didn't hang out with my friends anymore, right? I didn't have a life of my own. We were just hanging out with her friends and spending time with her family, and I barely got to see my family. And it was at the time I felt pressure, saying, I want to do these things. And, now I can look back and realize like I just wasn't strong enough to tell her what I wanted and what I needed and what I desired. And, typical, prolific people pleaser or nice guy trait. And so it sent me into this kind of downward negative spiral of depression, of isolation, not feeling like I could reach out to anybody. Well, because one, I'm a man, right? And men don't ask for help. At least that was my belief pattern then. A lot of men feel that and experience that. Like nobody cares about what I'm experiencing. And I hear this a lot from men. And I started having suicidal thoughts, suicidal ideations in this marriage where I'm like, I didn't feel seen or understood, and I wanted to better myself, and I didn't feel supported by my partner either. I didn't feel supported by the one person that was supposed to love me. And I realized after couples counseling and therapy, I'm kind of fast tracking this part here a little bit. This was 5 years in the making, I realized I was like, I don't want to die. Like, I actually don't, why is that even an option? And I started thinking about it. I was like, there's no way I'm the only one who feels this way. And so after going through couples counseling and then seeing our own individual counselors, I made the decision to get divorced because I didn't see a way out. And the only way out that I saw was me killing myself. And I know a lot of men feel that and experience that. And I fucking empathize with you because, I didn't do it, but I know a lot of men do. And this feeling of just like, there's no way out it's suffocating. And it can begin to take up a lot of mental space and a lot of capacity. And so we got divorced December 10th of 2014. And I didn't know what I was doing. Had no idea. I didn't know who I was. I was on a journey of searching of who I am and who I am as in a world as a man where everyone's trying to tell me what a man is.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
And so it sent me on this journey of self-exploration. I found music festivals and I started just exploring. Like, I started having fun. And that was something I really wasn't used to. I was so judgmental of myself, which in turn that projected onto other people. But I was judgmental in the fact that I was like, I wish I could be as free as these people, right? Like, or look as free as these people maybe feel. And I was never a dancer, which is funny because a lot of people who know me now, they're like, dude, you never stop moving. Like in the sense of like, I love dancing, right? I love moving my body, when I'm dancing with my woman, I love just moving and grooving. But 2016 was a year that really massively shifted and changed my life. And I went to my first ever music festival. And I'm not condoning this or saying that people should go out and do this. But it definitely altered and shifted my life in a very beautiful way.
Yeah.
But I ended up taking some ecstasy and LSD and had a spontaneous awakening at the festival. Beautiful. Like, I kept seeing people
about MDMA, like if that was part of the process. Yeah.
Oh, it was absolutely incredible. I understood. I started to understand, like that inner standing. Let's say that.
Yeah.
I started to understand. I was like looking at all these people and looking at how free they were and like no judgment. They were just moving their bodies and doing whatever the hell that they wanted to do and loving each other in the process, supporting each other in the process. Like, sick dance moves, dude. I love that. What's your name? And I'm like, what is happening right now?
Wow.
And this kept sending me on a journey of just like exploring. I would go to different shows, different festivals, connect with people, get to meet people, fall in love, this Molly love, the MDMA love.
Yeah.
And I started exploring different podcasts and different books and video casts, like Lewis Howes. I think it was when he first started his the School of Greatness, and then Tom Bilyeu with Impact Theory, and Aubrey Marcus and Ed Milet and Andy Frisella,
Yeah.
like all these people who had just literally just started their podcasts. It felt like, and I was just learning from them, and I started understanding about mindset creation and meditation and breath work, and just really trying to understand, myself more. And 2017 came around, and there's this thing in astrology called known as the Saturn return. Are you familiar with that?
Yep. But
The
for
20
those who aren't, explain that real quick.
Yeah, I like to simplify things. So Saturn return is basically the universal sledgehammer.
Yeah. Good way to say it. That's good.
So
Yeah.
it's astrologically, it's a time in your life when Saturn returns back into orbit in your chart, right? And I think it's every 27 to 30 years, something like that. Don't hold me to that. But you can look this up on your own for the audience who's listening. And so 2017, literally the month that everything happened or started happening, was when that universal sledgehammer came down. And that was June of 2017. And so I ended up going to a music festival in Vegas, and for 7 days. And I took a lot of drugs, and I ended up meeting a woman there, and we connected, and she was from Orlando. And, we were we were side by side the entire time. And we, fell in love, at least during that time. And so we talked about coming back and dating and all this stuff. And then I think it actually started to settle in for her. And so we went from communicating all the time to then just completely ghosted me. And I found out through social media that she ended up going back to her ex. And it kind of like broke my heart, at least at the time, right? Like, I'm like, how do we have this kind of connection, all this stuff? And then my dog got sick. And, for anyone who has a puppy or a dog or know, like, that feeling of your animal getting sick is heart-wrenching.
Yeah.
He ended up dying 3 weeks later. Just everything happened so fast. But before that, this is where stuff started to shift and change for me. Is, I was partying a lot. I was searching for something. I was just continuously searching externally.
Yeah.
And this, I ended up working 7 nights in a row. I worked at a hospital doing pre and post operative open heart care, and I worked a lot to afford the lifestyle that I wanted to live. But I wasn't sleeping as much. And so one day after work, it was a Saturday going into a Sunday morning, my friends invited me to brunch, and I was like, sure, I'll go to brunch. I'll sleep 2 hours, 3 hours, and I'll be good to go. Right. At that time in my life, I was like, yeah, I'm fine. I'll be fine. Ended up going to brunch, had a couple drinks, did the all you can eat, all that stuff, had a great time with them. And I noticed I started getting tired. Like, I just started getting really tired. And that was about like 5 p.m. So I stopped drinking. I was like, I'm just going to keep drinking water. I want to spend time with them and hang out, and ended up going back to their place in the hot tub. And I ended up falling asleep in the hot tub.
Wow. Yeah.
It was like 9 p.m., 9:30 p.m. And then, they were laughing, and I didn't know why anyone was laughing. And I just woke up, and I was like, I got to go. Like, I got to go home, or else I'm not going to make it home. Like, I just felt like I was, going to fall asleep. Well, I ended up falling asleep. And so I ended up starting to drive home. And between St. Pete and Tampa is this I think it's like 7-mile bridge. And I was going 65, 70 miles an hour. And I started noticing myself dozing off until I just completely fell asleep. And I didn't know I fell asleep until I woke up, because I collided with a pickup truck.
Oh my gosh, bro.
And the pickup truck was a 4-door pickup truck, like a Ford F-150. My car hit them, they rolled, hit the other guardrail on the other side, and the impact of that put me into the middle guardrail. In this, I went airborne, and by the grace of God,
Mm-hmm.
my instead of my car going straight, it ended up turning and turned back onto the highway.
Wow.
And my car came down to a screeching halt. I hit my head multiple times on the steering wheel,
Mm.
my knee, my shoulder, all this. And the car slammed down on the bridge. Entire right side of the car completely dismantled. Like, the tires normally like this, it was like this.
Wow.
All windows, airbags deployed, windows bashed out, and hit my head on the steering wheel again. And then moments later, I just came to. And I just started feeling around my body, and I started feeling my legs and my arms and my head, and I just was like, "Holy shit! Am I alive?"
Mm.
And what ended up happening shortly after is I got out of the car, because I remembered, I'm like, I just hit a pickup truck, and I got out of the car. It was difficult to walk because I was still kind of like coming to, and I looked over and I saw this pickup truck on its side, or I think it was on its side or on the roof. It wasn't the way a pickup truck should be. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
And that moment, I thought, I was like, I just killed 4 people. Like, whoever was in that, I just killed them. And that was the first thought. And luckily, by the grace of God, again, nobody, like barely anybody was hurt. They ended up going to the hospital. There's 4 people in there, and
Wow.
The Florida Highway Patrol came over to me, and he asked me what happened. I told him, I was like, I fell asleep, and I don't know what happened. He asked me, he goes, was that before or after you were drinking? And I said, I was drinking earlier today, but I stopped drinking at 5 p.m. And again, by the grace of God, I got a reckless driving. And not a DUI. Like, I should have gotten should have, right?
Right.
Gotten a DUI.
Right.
In that moment, like, as he walked away, I could see like the disappointment and also what I felt inside, the shame and the guilt. And I started like looking over at the water, and I was just that was, I think, the moment that I had divine intervention. And that's, I would say, Gus, God, universe, spirit, source, spoke to me, and basically said, like, you're meant to do more in this life than the life that you've been living. Like, the simple pleasures will always be here, always. And if you don't, let me rephrase this. If you continue to go down the path that you're going, you will die. And so the choice is yours. Right. And it just felt like a very stern message, but with a lot of like compassion. And so from then on, again, like right after that, my dog died. And so just like woman, car accident, dog, the first form of unconditional love that I had ever experienced, because you don't really know that your parents love you unconditionally, right? Until you experience it from something else, like this beautiful beast, because his name was Rocco. He was a 110-pound Rottweiler.
Wow. Yeah.
And big, gentle, like gentleman, gentle giant. And he just loved everybody. That really, I realized I was alone again. And that sent me on this journey of like my sister, how was it? During that exact month, my niece was born. And she's like, I want you to be the godfather. And in Italian culture and tradition, that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
And she asked me, she goes, you know what this means, right? Like, she needs an example of what it looks like to be around a healthy man.
Mm.
And it just fucking broke me, man. It broke me. And I was like, okay, like I need to start doing things better for myself and better for my family.
Mm.
And I wish that was the end of it. Towards the end of that year, I mean, I did become a godfather, and and I still am, right? And it's one of the things that I fucking love. I so appreciate. Towards the end of that year, one of my best friends at the time, who I would go to festivals with and stuff, and mind you, I didn't stop going. I just stopped like chasing, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I almost became like the rave dad, if that, like making sure, taking care of people, still dancing, but like, hey, you got water? You good? You need some electrolytes? I got you. Like these kind of things.
Yeah.
Well, one of my friends in November of that year, we had just gotten back from a festival and like a month before, and he ended up dying of a massive heart attack. His heart was like 3 times the size of a normal heart, and I didn't realize, and neither did his wife. He was doing a lot of cocaine. And so he just died on the spot. And so I ended up taking his daughters along with one of his best friends, another one of his best friends, to the father-daughter dance. And that really, hit me too, because I was like, they are now growing up without their father. And because of the lifestyle choices that he chose to make. And that really put things again into perspective for me. It's like, and this is, I want to pre-frame this or preface this, that this is not coming from a place of judgment.
Yeah.
It was just me reflecting on what is, how my life could go if I kept going, right? If I kept going.
Right.
And so 2018 came around, and I'll fast forward here a bit to October, but I met this woman, and this like very beautiful woman. We're still friends to this date. And she ended up triggering all of my insecurities, all of my nice guy shit. And this is why this summit is so important to me, is because I didn't know I was a nice guy. I was so masculine in every other aspect of my life, but when it came to the relationship, I always went down into the submissive role. Happy wife, happy life mentality, the walking on eggshells, didn't want to disturb the peace, right? Depolarizing, the sexual attraction started to dissipate, and I'm like, well, what am I doing? And I started like almost victimizing myself. Until I went on a trip to Iceland, and towards the end of that year, I went for a week by myself, and I rented a camper van and traveled the country.
Wow, cool.
It was fucking amazing. And it was also a very difficult time because she was supposed to come with me. And it was a really deep healing process for myself. And I got back, and we ended up separating. And she was the first person I told about the men's group. The men's group idea that I had. And she said to me, and I remember the date, December 30th of 2018. She said to me, I feel like this next part of your journey you have to do on your own. And she's like, I'm not ready for all of what I feel like is going to happen in your life. And while I was so painful at the time, I'm so grateful for her because of that. Because it set me on this journey to understanding myself more as a man. And I would say New Year's Eve came, and without going too deep into this story, is like when I spoke to Gus again. I was just like, because of the heartbreak that I was feeling and experiencing, I was like, I'm fucking ready. Like whatever I'm supposed to be doing here, whatever I'm supposed to do in this lifetime, like I'm ready to live in my purpose, because I had no idea what that was. I'm ready to, stop searching and stop chasing and trying new things and all this shit. I was like, I'm fucking ready. And I feel like that's when shit just started happening. I had friends say that I should watch this documentary by Tony Robbins called I'm Not Your Guru. And man, that documentary changed me. I didn't know what I was looking for in there. It found me. And there was this one moment where this woman stands up and talks, and I can see the smile on your face as you know what I'm about to say.
Yeah.
And she's explaining her husband, and she's like, he's just such a kind man. He's such a nice guy, and he's just like, and I'm paraphrasing here, such a kind man, and he's so sweet, and he's very gentle with me, and like he works so hard, and he loves me, and I love him, and she's like, and I feel like he's afraid to let out this other side of him. Like I feel like there's this fucking animal inside of him that he's just afraid to let out.
Mm-hmm.
And then Tony asked, he's like, is he here today? And he was sitting right next to her. And I fucking, everything inside of me dropped. I was like, holy shit.
Mm.
I'm like, oh God, this feels like me.
Mm.
Like my body had a visceral response to this. And then Tony's guiding him through a process and he stands him up and starts guiding him through a process, asking him these questions. And he said to him, he looks at him, he goes, heal the boy and the man will appear.
Mm.
And that phrase will forever be ingrained in me, because in that moment I hit pause because my body had the truth bumps again, that visceral response.
Mm.
And I started looking at it. I was like, I kept saying it. I'm like, heal the boy. I wrote it down, like everything. And I'm like, what the fuck? And then in the blink of an eye, I started going back in chronological order to all of my relationships, from the most recent all the way back. It's like with the woman that I was seeing at prior to music festival woman, to ex-wife, and then all the way until high school or college and high school, and all the way back. And I realized, I was like, I'm the common denominator in all my relationships. And I was like, okay, well, what does that mean? Me being the common denominator. And then that took me all the way back to childhood. And I didn't realize I was doing my own shadow work and inner child work in the moment that I was doing it. But I started to realize, I was like, holy shit, my childhood. And these certain aspects of my childhood that really were, put into perspective.
Right.
And I know I'm talking quite a bit, but there's,
it's beautiful. I'm tracking. It's beautiful.
It's, it really, put a spotlight on certain aspects of my childhood, of my father being, this, he was physically present, but he wasn't emotionally present. He's from Sicily, Sicilian man, very emotional, but not in the emotion that you think, right? Not like crying, but just more of like, discipline, we called it discipline, right? But
yeah. We talked about that.
Yeah. Something very different.
Yep.
And realizing like he did what he had to do to provide for our family. And he was physically present, or he was not physically present, or he was physically there, but not emotionally there. Yeah. And I needed someone to guide me into like these trials and tribulations and challenges of masculinity. Like this world is not fucking easy for a man, nor a woman, but like I feel like there's been more support in this sense for women. And it's been interesting, like looking back on that aspect of my life and realizing my mom was very submissive to my father, but she was like the nurturer, the caregiver, the caretaker. And, but she would always like talk back or, argue and bicker or talk behind his back. But she's always told me, she goes, treat women nice, like treat them nice, and don't be like these other guys. And so I treated women nice, and I didn't want to be like the other guys. I didn't want to be like the asshole, right? I didn't want to be, controlling or anything like that. So I became the nice guy. And in that moment, I literally broke down crying, just like out of nowhere. And I realized, I was like, holy shit, like this is why I am the way that I am. And so I think it was 3 days later, I ended up flying up to North Carolina. That's where my parents and my sister and her kids lived at the time, and my brother-in-law. And I ended up having a conversation with my father. And that conversation completely changed the trajectory of my life. I believe that was one of my first initiations into masculinity
Mm,
of, and I feel like you and I spoke about this before on the interview. It was the first time in my life, and think I was 29 or 30 at the time, first time in my life I'd ever seen him cry.
mm,
And, that's, it was because he finally shared his story, his relationship with his father and how his childhood was and how they didn't have a good relationship, how he didn't have any guidance, and he did what he needed to do to provide a roof over our head and provide food on the table and do what he felt he needed to do.
mm,
And he didn't know any better. And so, turning that mirror, I I started having compassion for him
mm,
and just understanding and realizing that, for me at least, like, I could love him in a different capacity, and I didn't no longer had to blame him, but I could take responsibility for my own life.
mm.
And I feel like that's when things really started to shift, from the boy becoming a man.
Mm.
And then I went to a men's initiation retreat that year as well.
I want to say one thing, and I don't want to interrupt your flow.
Yeah.
Interesting. Another thing, the thing that stood out to me from "I'm Not Your Guru" documentary is when the other gal stood up and talked about her father, and he's like, if you're gonna blame him for that, he's like, you're smart, you're intelligent, you're here. He's like, then blame him for everything. Blame him
Mm-hmm.
for the good and blame. In fact, I get chills right now. Like that was and it's cool that you, in the relationship or in that conversation with your dad, were able to, like you said, turn the mirror instead of looking at him as a window and looking through him and judging. It's like the context was given, and you found a space to love him. Another thing
Yeah.
that stood out while you're talking, I've never thought this before, but I find incredibly fascinating. I'm going to think about it after this call more, or this episode. For me, the three greatest hero journey stories that have resonated, like I remember the first time I saw Rocky when I was a kid, and we watched Rocky 1 through 5 as a family last week. It was spring break, and my kids got to see Rocky, and my son was all fired up after, and those movies were so impactful. Star Wars, and then Braveheart. Those three
Mm-hmm.
movies and storylines are like everything for me as far as what the hero's journey looks like. But all three of those men didn't have parents.
Mm-hmm.
Rocky's parents died early. Luke Skywalker's parents, well, we know we
Yeah.
know that whole
Yeah.
story, how that turned out.
Yeah.
And uh and then um you know, William Wallace, in that context, his dad and brothers are killed, and his mom's never mentioned who she is, but the uncle comes and raises him. And there's something to, I think, becoming the hero and separating the ingrainedness of the parent child dynamic and staying in that spot to coming alongside and being a peer, like you did with your own father, and looked at him as a man and you as a man, and how you've come to that place. I think
Mm.
there's something really prolific to that. And I like that word. I use it quite a bit because it
I love it. I love
has
it.
just the phonetics of it and
Yeah.
the tone of it. It's a great word, but there is something to that. It's like, and one of the things that I help guys even at the men's retreats is, so often we want to protect that parent relationship and say they did the best. A lot of guys, it's interesting, like, well, they did their best, and it's also okay to say, well, their best fucking sucked. Okay, like their best was terrible, and
Mm.
not in judgment, just saying I didn't get what I needed, and now I'm gonna go solve it myself and find that for myself, versus continue to stay in that dynamic of, like we talked about it on the recording. You get hit by
Mm.
a man, what do you think that dynamic is going to be the rest of your life? And especially if the man never acknowledges it, and you just stay in this dynamic of like being small, versus that's such a cool opportunity that Gus gave you and your dad was open to sit down and look at you as a man and a fellow brother and not his son in that moment. I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. It, and you're
And I
exactly
honor your
right.
father for that. I really do. Wherever he is right now, I just honor that man for holding that space for you and himself.
Yeah. Yeah. And thank you for saying that, because it's definitely something that him and I have been developing over the last, 5 years now. I think it is since we had that conversation,
Mm,
and or no, 4 years, 2019,
mm,
and where I've been getting caught up in with that relationship specifically is wanting him to be somewhere that he might not be willing to go,
yeah.
and really accepting that it's okay that he's not, I might not have the relationship that I want from him, the expectation, but what I can do is meet him where he's at,
Mm,
and be curious about him and his life and his childhood, and it's actually been really beautiful because me being curious these last 4 years has really, I got to see his first house in
mm,
Sicily, through photos. I got to see him when he was a teenager,
mm,
going back to some of the Colosseums in Sicily and just how he played soccer in Sicily.
mm,
And so I really got to see, just learn more about him. I got
mm,
to learn more about who he is and his childhood and his uproots, and just even pulling up Google Maps, which
mm.
is really dope. He didn't know you could do this. I pull
That's
up Google
cool.
Maps, and I'm just like, tell me what your address was. And he goes, why? I'm like, oh, just tell me. So I pulled it up, and he goes, I'm like, is this where you were born? He goes, holy shit, you can do this?
That's cool.
you know?
That's amazing.
Um, so it's just really cool because it's like, it's a different relationship than I had when I was a kid. I think he came to maybe 3 of my soccer games,
Mm,
and I played because of him.
wow.
It's like I played because I wanted to prove to him that I was like, hey, like, I want your love.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that journey just, it kept going. It kept going to an initiation men's retreat that I went to,
Mm,
hosted by Elliot Hulse, if you're familiar with him.
mm, no.
He's got very polarizing views on masculinity. I actually love it, in the sense I love people's other perspectives,
Right. Right.
and while I definitely don't agree with I don't want to say definitely, while I don't agree with a lot of the perspectives that he has, there is validation, and I can see the value in what he's saying.
Mm,
I feel like we, as a masculinity collective, as men collectively, we're evolving the paradigm.
yeah.
Like, we're shifting, we're moving. It's not just traditional values anymore,
Right.
right? Like, there are strong women who don't need a man for his money. They don't
Mhm.
need a man for these things, but they do want to be. They do want to be led. They do want to surrender. They do want to trust, and they also want a man.
Mm, yeah.
And so there's a lot of polarizing, viewpoints on masculinity. And
Yeah.
I'm super grateful that I get to be a part of it in some capacity, along with you, and like this message that we get to spread of, like,
Yeah.
really just fucking not helping men become more masculine, but helping them return to what's already born with inside of them.
That's right. Yes.
It's like this, it's like, we're not trying to make men more masculine. It's like, fuck that. Like, really just helping men find it in themselves.
Yeah.
Because some men are more feminine,
Mm-hmm.
right? In nature, feminine, masculine. Like,
Yep.
we talked about these energies that we both have residing inside of us.
Yep.
I use the 80-20 rule.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's most men are going to be more masculine. So they're like helping men unlock that and not be afraid of it.
Yeah. That's right.
Not be afraid to be direct and assertive, and communicate your wants, needs, and your desires, and be grounded in who you are, and live your life by a set of pillars or values or ethos or tenets. And it's just like, just really just drilling it in. Like, you don't have to do this shit alone either.
Right. Right. It's
So
interesting.
that's,
I'm trying to think of those three stories that I was using, the rant rock, the Rocky, the William Wallace of Braveheart and Luke Skywalker in Star Wars never were alone. They always had a mentor guide. They had someone that, Rocky had Mick, Luke Skywalker had Obi-Wan Kenobi, and William Wallace had his uncle. And there is that, and none of those men were their biological fathers. And I think so often, and I don't even know if it's possible where the biological father, maybe, I mean, I haven't seen it. Because in order to heal, we have to separate the connection, and focus on ourselves as our own sovereign unit.
Mm-hmm.
But there is such a need for the wisdom being passed down from next generation, the previous generation, or that sage archetype that comes in and says, don't do it that way, Rock, or whatever he's saying, like use the force or whatever.
Yeah.
Like a recorrection. And I think it's beautiful that all these different men, this masculine collective it's like resetting. For instance, I had a coaching call this morning, and I've been dealing with just all sorts of, it's been like I've had many dark nights of the soul. This is definitely one of them. And it seems like it's the greatest one because it's brought my wife in it, and it's my children in it, and it's a lot of stuff. And my coaching call this morning, she said, my coach, who was just amazing, who I found because I had her on this podcast, and then we just hit it off. But she's like, what did that little 10-year-old boy want to say back then? And that little 10-year-old boy, and I started crying because I've done so much healing work, but I've never been asked, what did that 10-year-old boy want to say back then? It's always like, what do I want to say to myself? How do I want to heal that 10-year-old boy? How do I want to talk to that boy? But what did that boy need to say? And the boy needed to say, why are you hurting me? And all I want to do is be loved by you. Wow. Like I would do anything to be loved by you. And you just, why are you hurting me? And so that little boy in me, who realized that the only way to be seen was to be perfect, or you to be nice, you know what I mean? Like there's this like modeling of like affirmation that comes from that unit structure. That innately we know we're not happy, but it's like the veneer, the fog, the atmosphere is only that. You can only breathe that in, right? You're only the nice guy. It was like until something comes and wakes us up from it or snaps us out of it. And I'm sorry, what was your dog's name again? Brutus?
Rocco.
Yeah. Like Rocco. And I believe this dog's, you say Gus, God, universe, source, and spirit.
Yeah.
But I also think, and I think it's so cool that dog, D-O-G, or God, G-O-D, are the beings here to show us unconditional love, that they are God's heart. And it's almost like MDMA has been a huge teacher for me to understand, like, this is love. This is, and where does the source come from beyond this temporary? How can we find that North Star? But I always like to think that dogs are living being MDMA creatures. They just,
I love that.
They're just like, they're in it, and it doesn't matter. It's like, it's all good. And it's a cool gift that Rocco gave you to, like Obi-Wan Kenobi, physically in your hero's journey, in the physical form, escape, but also be here right now. We're talking, and is Rocco any less real? And I can feel Rocco even on this call. So I mean, it's a beautiful gift that I think when I will wrap it. I want to send it back to you, but I'm struck by the archetypes, but it's definitely like an equation that we all have these variables that we plug into this process, and it will always bring this output. And the output, before we're conscious about replacing the variables that we want, are producing an output that is not of our own choosing. It's of a condition receiving or something like that, but once we can step into, I'm going to take that variable out, I'm going to put in a new variable, it becomes incredibly powerful. We're talking about masculinity, and it's like, well, what is the nice guy? The nice guy is a variable given to us that we're going to be seen, heard, affirmed, whatever, loved. But we find out, like, no, we're only seen, heard, affirmed, and loved when we are our truest self. Like you're saying, that we're not becoming masculine. We're actually reclaiming who we really are. So I find it fascinating, brother. This whole
reclamation.
Yeah, reclamation, dude. It's a fascinating time. First of all, I just want to honor you. I just love hearing this story. I know it's not done. I cut you off to talk about stuff, but those journeys, the music festivals, one of the things, how did LSD and how did MDMA and whatever else during that time, how did that expand what you knew there was? I think that's what was your perception of life and reality and maybe God or spirituality or being raised Catholic or whatever it is, some existential, and then you take that experience and all of a sudden something's in you. What was the shift there for you?
Well, so it's a great question. The shift was experiencing something outside of myself. Like something much deeper, because I grew up in a Roman Catholic home where, and these are my beliefs on how my perspective and how I saw it, but it was just, we were going to church because it was cool, it was a cool thing to do. And I was not a big fan. I felt like I was going to hell every time I walked in there because I didn't believe in what was being told to me. And to the point where every time I looked up and looked around, I was just like, is the devil here? Just like that religious fear, that religious trauma.
But bro, seriously, that is a great question. Yeah, there's some wisdom in that childlike.
Yeah.
There's some wisdom in that, brother.
Yeah. And it's stuff that I don't even know if I fully unpacked yet. That the religious aspect of my childhood. I mean, this is the irony of it all. Okay, I was so afraid I was going to hell, and yet I was cast as Joseph for a Christmas play. Right, like, yeah. The irony, at least in my mind.
Yeah, no, right.
At least in my mind. I'm like, I don't want anything to do with this. Wow. Oh yeah, we're gonna cast you as Joseph. All right, cool. All right, this is great. Yeah. And so, this, going back to the original question of like how this kind of like helped me, what happened, like, and I feel like if I had integrated it better during that time, I wouldn't have continued to keep searching.
Yeah.
Right. But what I got from it is these, like, Jesus is real, right? And so is Buddha, and so is Allah. All of these deities, they're all real, right? They're on their own journey, their own thing, but it's not like they, at least in my perspective, higher than we are. But more along the lines of like, let me show you how you can live your life. Yeah. It doesn't have to be the way that you've been told. You can live a very compassionate, a very service-oriented life, and be, rewarded for it, in the sense of like, you don't really need much to live in this world. Like, we like to overcomplicate things. With, okay, we need this kind of house, we need this kind of vehicle, we need these toys, to come down to the point. It's like, why do we need these? What actually does it provide for us?
Right.
And this is something that I believe a lot of men struggle with, is like achievement, achieve. Get the thing, get the girl, get the home, get all this stuff. But what happens when you take all of that away? Like, what are you actually left with?
Right.
It's like you're left with the man in the mirror.
Right.
So I've literally had everything stripped away. Like
Mm.
I've had all of it, and I've continuously built myself up. Do I have the nicest car? No. Does it get me from A to B and does it protect me? Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do I want to build a life that I could never have dreamed of? Absolutely.
Mhm.
But that's just because I want to do whatever I want whenever I want and serve whoever I want whenever I want.
Amen. Yeah, that's right.
And it's
What?
like, I want a family. I want all this stuff, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it's beautiful. One of the things you said, but for the grace of God, or,
Mm.
however you said that. And I've been thinking a lot about one of the things I'm in my own journey is I'm so I've had the religious narrative so ingrained in me, and it's foundational, but I'm also want to remove it as foundational and just use what I want of it. But I've been thinking a lot about this word grace, and
Mm.
grace is the essence of love, unconditional love, because the definition of grace is something given that you don't deserve,
Mm.
or you didn't earn, or you didn't work for. It's just given. It's free. It's the essence of love. It's oxygen in the air. I don't have to work for the air in my lungs right now to talk to you. It's just a gift. It's free. It's our job whether we want to be conscious in our breath or not, but it's there and it's always there. And I think it's such a beautiful concept where we don't have to work, like you're saying. You're talking about like amassing materialism, which may or may not, in and of itself is neutral. It could be just a tool and assets, but when we see it as a blessing, as a byproduct, as something that comes from the desire of our heart to serve and to love and to honor one another and to bring light and love and goodness in this world. It's like grace is always there, just saying this is just a byproduct. And the word mercy is actually antithetical to grace, but
Mm.
it's the duality of mercy is something withheld that you do deserve. So you said you should have gotten a DUI, meaning like that's what like that was probably should have whatever. But that's mercy. Someone had mercy. Gus had mercy on you. Say, I'm going to withhold what you think you deserve so I can
Mm.
give you what you never earned in and of
Wow.
yourself. Like that is such in fact, I have children right now. That's the paradigm I think we're all waking up to as humanity right now, is a non-religious filter over these words, mercy and grace.
Mm.
And it's like your story. I'm just listening to you, brother, and like this is a story of mercy and grace in your life, and like how you even share about masculinity. You're like, I'm not. You're a gentle soul, I guess, is my experience of you in a world where it's like, what is masculinity? You got to be a hard ass. Like, no, actually, just be you, be authentic, be free, breathe deeply, and expand. I said, I don't know where I'm going with this, other than I really
Mm.
love every time we jam together. It's like, yeah, I see you, and I really honor your journey, brother.
I
I
receive you,
really
dude.
do. I really do.
Thank you. The feeling is very much mutual.
Yeah,
I know we've been talking about like I receive
yeah,
your love.
yeah.
I receive that, and just I fucking appreciate you and the work that you've done in your journey throughout this entire thing. And again, going back to watching your TEDx, and
Mm.
even before that with our connection call, and just like how this has all just been this unfolding of just we could have gone different paths, right? We could have gone very differently.
Yes, yes.
And I feel like a lot of men at times get lost, and I'll speak for myself. You get lost in this idea of thinking it can only be one way,
Mm,
and that way is normally maybe the easier route.
mm,
And this route that I believe that we've chosen, destiny versus free will.
mm.
I think there's certain aspects to both of this,
Yep,
right?
yep.
Um, this path that we've been put on and then chosen is one that is not the most traveled,
Right.
but it feels like it is because I get to meet men like yourself,
Mm,
and I get to realize through that, like, oh, I'm not alone.
Hmm.
And like we're all doing some pretty powerful work being led by, our divine source, whoever that may be,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
serve people at our greatest capacity
Hmm.
and to hopefully leave the world a better place than when we got in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because like right now, it's like we can kind of tell it needs it. The more that I know you probably speak about this and the work that you do and what you're doing, as just as it has been for me, it's like, thank you for doing what you do.
Hmm. Yeah, brother. Thank you.
Yeah.
What does your name mean? Do you know?
I do actually. So my name in totality, I don't have a middle name,
Huh.
is Fabiano Mannino.
Cool.
And so Fabiano is bean farmer. Yeah.
Cool.
And Mannino is little hand.
Wow.
And I don't have little hands and I'm not a bean farmer, but I like to think maybe like there's some symbolism there.
Well, you know
Like
what that is the detail and its care. A farmer, there's two things I want to share with you actually, and I'll send you after you. There's a book that was written, I think, in the 1600s called Pilgrim's Progress by a man named John Bunyan, who was thrown in prison for not sticking to the Anglican and Romanistic narrative. This was a free thinking, Bible reading, sovereign man who saw things a little different. And because he shared those different views, was cast into jail. But in jail, he wrote this book, this incredible allegory called Pilgrim's Progress.
hmm,
And you remind me of the head guy, the main protagonist in it. His name was Christian, and Christian goes on this journey, and on the journey meets doubt. Doubt tries to get to say, "What do you do? Who do you think you are?" Meets envy, meets, and so it's all these character traits, but he personifies them on this journey, and I just think you are the Pilgrim's Progress. We are all progressing in this journey. And the other thing that I was thinking of while you're talking is what's cool is in this, you're talking about like I use this word, I don't know why, but sojourning. We're all sojourning together, and it's like we're walking side by side. We know where we're going. Somewhere we've seen it before. We've just never seen it with these physical eyes yet. But we're going to this place. We're creating this world that we know is a better place, and it's beautiful. And there's a story that Angus, trying to think of his last name. He's a South African butt kicker, but
hmm,
he's a farmer. He's a potato farmer. And there's a story about him, and he's alive today, called Faith Like Potatoes.
hmm,
And the book about him is incredible, where he had this encounter with God. He was not a faith man at all, but he was a farmer and he needed the rain and he would plow the fields. And there's a story somehow that people came to him and said, like, why are you plowing your fields? It hasn't rained. It's the drought this year. And he was diligent in plowing his fields, and he plowed it even though they were in a drought. And then when the rains finally came, the guys that were also had neighboring farms that didn't plow their fields because they were cynics and telling him he was crazy. When those rains came, Angus crop blossomed,
hmm.
and the naysayers had to buy from Angus essentially,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you remind me both of those stories, one allegory and one a true life person. Is cool that this, I mean, I'm going to stick with your name meaning real quick, but small hands and bean farmer, like beans need like a big, colossal, I'm not talking about physical attributes. I'm just talking about allegorically right now. Like if you had this big giant hands, it would crush this very soft after it's boiled or whatever,
Yeah.
it would
Yeah.
destroy the crop. But you have to have this sense of gentleness, but also firmness as a farmer. And so I'm just watching you and I'm like, man,
Hmm.
names have so much meaning. And you are cultivating something. You are a farmer, and what are you doing? You're tilling the hearts of man, is how I see you. You're
Hmm.
tilling the ground, so that when the rains come, that goodness comes, the byproducts that we were talking about, it's received in humility and it's received in honor, versus the ego sense of the guys next door with those hard-hearted, crusted surfaces. So I don't know, bro. I just want to tell you that
Damn.
I'm seeing you, and I'm excited for your journey and what you're doing. And everyone, like I've had some beautiful sisters reach out lately who listen to this podcast, one in Australia, one in Brazil, and one somewhere in the East Coast of the United States. When I have brothers come on and share their hearts, oh, this is going all over the world. It's going to elevate, it's
Yeah.
going to heal homes right now. Just talking to your story. So I'm, I don't know if I'm proud of you. I just want to give you a hug. I just like, man, really,
That
really
hut.
beautiful, brother. Really beautiful.
Thank you.
Where are you in the ranking of your siblings?
I am second in command.
Are there three?
There's four of us actually.
Okay.
So I say actually because I was 17 when my sister was born.
Got it.
Yeah. So it's my brother, and then me, then my other sister, and then the final one was we say gift from God.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
it is. Because truly, I mean, my mom was 41 when she was born,
Wow.
but yeah, just to go back to what you're saying, like, thank you.
So you were middle. So that makes sense. Now I see that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I get you, brother. I get you.
The middle child normally is looking
The
towards,
observer.
the
Yeah.
old, yeah. And I became the observer in life. Like I observed the way that, people respond or react. And and not, and again, in a sense of like judgment or anything like that, but I really just want to understand like why people do the things that they do. And, you can tell a lot by how much somebody has healed in the ways that they respond. And I used to say this thing, or not used to, I still say it at times, but you can really tell a lot how much someone is healed by the way they speak about their ex, and
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's definitely been a part of my journey. And I believe that's why I've been able to do what I do now.
Well, catch up. So let's finish with your journey.
Yeah.
Cut you off and deviated. Sorry.
Yeah.
But
No.
so the gal who was your greatest teacher and told you you're in Iceland, and then what happens when you come back from Iceland?
So Iceland led me into the conversation with my father.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Yeah.
And then, or Tony Robbins, and then that led me into the conversation with my father. And then, I realized I was like, I think I need to start a men's group. And, I was still hesitant because I didn't know. This is how disconnected I was from a lot of this stuff. I had no idea men's groups existed, like at all. I didn't know, a lot of the ones that we hear about nowadays, which are so, present in my life because I have connections with all of them.
Yeah.
I had no idea any of them existed. I was just like, I just need to start one. But I didn't want to lead it because I didn't see myself as a leader at the time. And it was so interesting because I started talking about it. I went to Phoenix in March. March has been a pretty transformational time in my life in a very good way. And it's interesting. We're in March now and the summit's going to be launching soon.
Yeah.
But March has been a very pivotal time in my life because I went to Phoenix for High Performance Academy Live, which is a summit hosted by Brendan Burchard. And I started talking about this idea that I had for the men's group there. 2,200 people. Brendan Burchard, didn't actually get to meet him, but you really get to connect with the people that you're experiencing alongside with. And I started talking about it, and it always out of every single small group, I kid you not, and I was in a lot. We were in a lot. We had a lot of breakouts, and everybody came back to me. They're like, "Tell me about this men's group idea." Like all the women, all the men were just like, "Tell me more. Like how can like you need to do this." Kind of thing. Like we men need this. And I have the truth bumps now because it's just like my whole body has a response. And I just started looking at him and I'm like, this is wild, because it wasn't the norm. Wasn't the normal thing to do. Yeah. I was told my parents were like, go to college, get a degree, have have safety and security, the financial safety and security, and that way you can grow up, you have a wife, all this stuff, yada yada yada.
Yeah.
And there was no distinct path for this. There's no like, this is how you start a men's group. This is the path you need to go. This is what you need to do. It was literally trial by fire. And that's how I've lived my life, trial by fire. And I wanted to say that I started it right after, but I didn't. Right. Without going too much into this story, I met a woman on a hike before I left Phoenix, and she saw me going down the wrong path. Very much older woman, mind you. She like just an incredible woman, incredible. Ended up being a good friend, but it was like one of those once in a moment. You're there. Come to find out, it was Joe Dispenza's best friend.
Huh.
And
amazing.
I had just started doing his work a year prior.
Amazing.
And she was like, I would say, an oracle in that moment, or a message, a sign, because I never saw her again, never heard from her again. I thought I had photos with her, not in my phone.
Wow. Like
you talk about, just like a divine message, spirit. She was that.
Wow.
And it's just wild because I have other photos from that exact hike. And she's in none of them. And I'm like, okay, I don't need to, like, you know what? I don't need to know. Yeah. All I know is that I got to experience it. And she was like confirmation, start the men's group. And so a couple months went by and I ended up going, I started to a kava bar. You familiar with kava? Yeah. Went to a kava bar, and this is July of 2019. And I talked about this idea to one of my friends. His name is Adam. He's a clinical herbalist. And it was the first conversation him and I had ever had. And it was 2.5 hours long. Wow. And I told him this idea I had for a men's group. And he's like, well, let's do it at my place. We'll have the first one there. Cool. Kid you not, like, we got to his place. There was a round table in the middle, and there was 8 of us that sat around a round table. And I told them my idea. I had a friend who helped me mind map it. And for those who don't know what mind mapping is, it's like it's like a brain dump on a map, and someone just helps you. And it's amazing. Highly recommend it. And that's where the men's group started. 2 weeks later, I went to a men's retreat, the initiation I told you about, led by Elliot Hulse, and ended up meeting one of my best friends. He was a volunteer there. He ended up coming back and staying with me for 3 months and helped me grow the men's group. Cool. Mind you, I was still working in corporate America. Like, I worked a full-time traveling job, 40, 50 hours a week plus travel. Yeah. And started this group. And it went from 8 of us to 10 of us to 12 of us. And then he came and he just started telling everybody. It went from like 15 to 20 men to 50. Wow. In 2 weeks. And then from there, by the end of those other 2 more weeks had passed, there was over 100. And I was just like, holy fuck, what do I do? Talk about everybody's looking at you for leadership, and you did not see yourself as a leader. It was another initiation. Wow. And it's been going on for the last 4 years now.
Dude, that's amazing. I got to wrap here in a sec. The summit. Talk about that, and we're gonna I'll promote it, and we'll get this thing going. But talk about the summit.
Yeah. So the summit's called the Masculinity Summit. And my intention is to have different topics, but this is going to be the first one. And the topic for this one is killing the inner nice guy to help men lead a fearless life. And like we spoke about, we're not, it's not necessarily about killing, right? But it's about healing and understanding and bringing awareness to this guy, because there's so many beautiful traits to what actual nice guys represent. Yeah. They're very kind-hearted. They genuinely care about people. They want to care for people. And they just need to know how to do it in a way that is not self-sacrificing. That they understand what their values are, that they can practice healthy boundaries and that they can communicate their wants, needs, and desires.
Mm.
And so this summit is a way I'm bringing in speakers from like yourself, from all over the country, right? I have you, I have so far Traver Boehm, GS Youngblood, Brian Reeves, Stefano Sifondos, Wayne Barkis. I think you're familiar with Wayne.
Yeah.
Aaron Alejandrino, who he is a co-founder of the Squire program and the MDK project with Bedros Keuilian.
Cool.
So it's fucking like this. It's wild. Like the men that are speaking on this, and just the amount of experience and stories. Because again, men learn from modeling.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. Yep. Being around other men is like how we grow and how we evolve, and seeing how other men are doing it. It's like, that's what I want to be. So I'm going to do what they do. And hopefully they can help me unlock what I need to inside of myself. Yeah. So it's like bringing all these men together to talk about the nice guy syndrome, to talk about the passive aggressive man, as Aaron calls it, and really giving men actionable tools to take away from each individual call. Right. And then obviously plugging you guys, like how can these men now come and support you or get coaching from you and the other speakers and who they resonate with and who they jive with, and really just bringing men together. Like that's the biggest thing, just bringing them all together and just in one space to just fucking dive deep.
I love it, brother. Yeah. I love it. And I love you. I love what you're standing for. And everyone, I'm going to put, I'll get the links in the show notes. Go sign up if you know, husband, brother, friend, yourself. Sign up for this summit. Every guy that you just mentioned, brother, has a beautiful perspective on it, and I'm excited to listen as well. So I'm going to put that in the show notes. And brother, thank you for coming on. I love you. And one of these days we will embrace in person, and it'll be glorious.
I'm looking forward to that. Big fucking embrace. I appreciate you so much.
Thanks, brother. Same.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, brother, thank you so much for coming on. And I'm excited for our next conversation. We're just going to keep this going. And everyone, like I said in the intro of this episode, make sure you go sign up for his Masculinity Summit. And if you know a brother also looking for freedom, I have my retreat May 25th through 29th in Dallas, Texas. It's going to be, the location's incredible, and there are 7 slots left. So please make sure, go to my website, go to lucasmack.com/retreats and apply. And it's go time. It's time to step into who we've always known we wanted to be. This is a big key, who we want to be, finding out that we really are. And I'm going to lead a lot of beautiful brothers through the process. So make sure you go sign up. Everyone, thank you so much. I love you all. I am Lucas Mack. This is the Golden Rule Revolution, and I'll talk to you on the next episode. Thank you, brothers and sisters, for listening. For support in your journey, go to my website, lucasmack.com.